Hello, I'm Dr. Killian McBride, and I teach political theory at the School of History, Anthropology, Politics, and Philosophy. A bit of a mouthful, I'm afraid. So I'm going to talk now about what it's like studying politics at Queen's and some issues that arise from the study of politics more generally. So the first question is why study at Queen's? And the answer is simple enough, that we're one of the 24 Russell Group universities, the elite universities in the UK. We're a very research-intensive university, and we figure prominently in various world rankings, UK rankings, and also the city of Belfast itself is a relatively inexpensive city to live in. I moved here from London. I found that a very pleasant surprise indeed. So if you want to study at a Russell Group university, there's a lot to be said for studying here at Queen's in particular, here in Belfast. As you can see, we have a lot of very fine buildings, a nice mix of traditional buildings like our lovely Lanyon building, but also a lot of very bright, modern, airy buildings. The university's invested a lot of money in this over the years, and I have to say, since I've come to Queen's, and there has been a tremendous improvement in our facilities. So you can see some of the beautiful new buildings in the slide here. Now, here's a little overview of what I'm going to talk about. First of all, a little bit about what is politics. I mean, that's what you're interested in, I guess. So I'm going to say a little bit about what it's like studying politics here at Queen's and at university level generally, as opposed to what you might have studied perhaps for your A-levels. I'm going to say a little bit about how the degree is structured and about the degree of specialization you find in the subject. Politics is an exceptionally diverse discipline. And we've got a lot of different facets to the study of politics, which we can cover very well here at Queen's in particular. So I want to say a little bit about that, and then finally say something about what sort of careers you might hope to have if you graduate with a politics degree. So the first thing I guess to say is that it's not for would-be politicians, or rather, it's not solely for would-be politicians. If you study politics, there's a wide variety of opportunities open to you in media, journalism, communications, business, NGOs, the civil service, and so forth. And it's not just for trainee politicians. Social science degrees, humanities degrees, more generally, don't train you for a specific job, but give you a range of skills to do a range of different jobs. They give you a wider set of skills and training and an intellectual outlook on the world that you can put to use in a variety of ways. So don't think that maybe politics isn't for you because you don't plan on having a political career. Some of our students do, and they go on to have political careers, very successful ones, but by no means all of them. Now, I want to say a little bit about what is the study of politics and why does it matter. You'll see this elderly Greek gentleman in the corner of my slide here. This is Aristotle, who has a good claim to be the first political scientist. He's a student of Plato, of course, wrote a large book about justice, so maybe Plato gets in there. But Aristotle did something that looks quite a lot like the study of politics today, that he mixed philosophy on the one hand with the comparative study of constitutions on the other hand. So we can plausibly say that politics is one of the oldest disciplines. It goes all the way back to about 300–400 BC with Aristotle. Now, the study of politics has such a long history precisely because politics is an essential part of human life. There's no one who doesn't live in a political community. You can change your political community, you can move from one to the other if they let you in, of course, but there's no option of not living in a political community. Even if you live on the most distant island, you'll fall under the jurisdiction of some political community. The oceans and space itself is regulated in a variety of ways by international agreements, themselves a product of action by states. So politics is just built into the fabric of our lives. Now, when I say that, it's also true that politics has a very specific focus on our lives together, our collective lives as human beings. And that focus is really on how we take the decisions that structure those lives, how we shape the institutions, the laws, the policies that affect everybody's lives. So while other aspects of the social sciences, like sociology, for example, might look at the sort of routine habits that people have in social life, politics is very much focused on decision making, how these decisions are made and how these decisions are enforced, and the way in which these structure our lives together. So even if you're not interested in politics, there's a sense in which politics is interested in you. There's nobody who isn't affected in all sorts of very important ways by political decision making. We can see this at present with the COVID crisis and the role that politics has in taking decisions or not taking decisions, taking good decisions, taking not so good decisions. This has a massive impact on everybody's lives, and it reaches out into all different areas of social life, into economics, into law, into the health service, into our day-to-day lives in all sorts of ways that perhaps we're not normally aware of necessarily, unless of course you're a student of politics, in which case you're very much clued into this. Now, the great German Chancellor Otto von Bismarck famously said that if you like laws and sausages, you're better off not knowing how either of them are made. I have to say, if you're a student of politics, this is exactly what interests you. Not sausages necessarily, but how laws get made. And there are two ways to think about this. One of them is to think that politics is very narrowly concerned with formal political parties, with elections, with legislatures, and making formal laws and making government policies. And of course, politics is all of those things. But it's important to remember that politics is also a wider study. So outside the formal parliamentary sphere of politics, there's also the wider public sphere in which ordinary people, they read the newspaper, they watch the news, they go on social media, they talk to their friends. And this is the sphere of public opinion forming. So people who aren't involved in formal politics are nonetheless always involved in politics because they're contributing to the forming of public opinion. And that's also of huge importance for the study of politics. So we look at the formal institutions, formal party competition and so forth, but we're also looking at this wider public sphere, at its history and its culture, at themes like the culture war, disputes about free speech, no platforming, cancel culture, social movements for equality and freedom like Black Lives Matter. All of these things fall under the sphere of politics. So whether you're interested in the formal nitty-gritty, the mechanics of political life in parliaments, or whether you're interested in the wider political culture that shapes how we look at the world and how these feed into decision-making, there's something for you in the study of politics. Now, why study politics at Queen's? I've already said that Queen's is a Russell Group university. The thing to notice about our politics group in particular is that we're a very large politics group. We are one of the largest in the UK, and we are the largest in Ireland. Why does this matter to you? Well, it matters because we have a very wide range of specializations available to you. So when you come to study politics at Queen's, having this large range of staff, and a very diverse and international body of staff, I might add, gives you the option of studying a wider range of subjects. So that's the advantage of studying in a large department like our own. What sorts of things are you going to study when you come to study politics? I've spoken a bit about Aristotle. I have to confess, I'm a political theorist. So I study concepts and theories like freedom, justice, equality, and so forth. But I'm just one amongst a whole team of people studying all the different aspects of politics. So on the one hand, you'll study formal mechanisms and models of politics, different types of constitution, different ways to organize your parliament. Do you need two chambers? Do you need one chamber? What sort of electoral system do you have? Is PR to be preferred over first past the post? Which type of PR? All of these questions are important, and you can study courses on those. We can look at political behavior, the shape of political parties, whether parties are growing or declining in the world as a whole, what different forms they take, the rise of populism in particular. As I say, you can study concepts and values, ideas about freedom, justice, equality, and so on, if you study political theory. Obviously, with our history in Northern Ireland, there's a particular focus has grown up in the school on the study of conflicts, both our local conflict, but also international conflicts. It's very important in the study of politics to be able to compare different national cases to see if we can draw general lessons from them and to see how things have played out elsewhere around the world. So we always have a sort of global focus a global comparative focus when we study politics. In recent years, the study of security and terrorism has grown as a field. So separate from studying particular conflicts, there's also the different mechanisms of security, surveillance, and issues such as terrorism as well that will be studied in our degree. Obviously, the environmental crisis is of growing importance, and we have a number of experts working on different aspects of that as well. So you can study environmental politics, the political economy of climate change and so forth. Also, international organizations, obviously with Brexit, the relations between the UK and the European Union, but also the US and partners in Asia have come to the fore in day-to-day discussions of politics. And we'll also be studying that as part of the politics degree, not just the Brexit process specifically, but also the relationships between international organizations and the conduct of international relations more generally. And finally, a very important part of any social science degree is the study of methods, how people generate information about political life, and how we are to interpret and assess it. Increasingly in today's world, we have floods and floods of information thrust at us through social media, some of which is good and reliable, accurate information, much of which is not. It's very important in a social science degree, like a politics degree, to learn how to interpret the different sorts of information that we're presented with, to be able to think about how methods are used and think, well, could they really have found this out? What sort of methods would they need to have used? What sort of sample sizes? You know, is this really reliable? Can I trust this? And also how to generate your own research as well. So there's lots of opportunities in the degree to apply these methods to carry out student projects of different sorts and engage in a degree of primary research of your own. So that's an important aspect of the politics degree. It doesn't require too much maths. If you're like me and you weren't particularly keen on maths at school, it's more than that, but it's a very important part of our degree at the same time. Now, politics is central to human life, and of course it reaches its fingers out in all sorts of areas, and it connects with other disciplines. Obviously, if you're studying international politics, politics between states, one valuable addition is to know languages. So you can combine the politics degree with a variety of other degree pathways. We'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. But it's important to recognize that if you do politics, you can also have the option of studying a joint degree. So you can combine your politics degree with study in another area. And many of these go very, very well with the study of politics. They complement each other. So you can study languages in politics. You can study economics in politics. We have a specific degree which places special emphasis on that. But even if you don't take that route, you can still combine economics with politics. It's an important part of public policy making to understand how economic decisions are taken, economic trends are interpreted, and so forth. Also with law, there's close connections, particularly from my field, political theory, where we're concerned with questions about justice, for example. There's an overlap with jurisprudence. We're also very, very interested in assessing whether laws are fair or not, how they operate, what sort of consequences they produce. So there's a good overlap with law. History, obviously, we're in a joint school with our historians. Political history has always been a very notable strength of our school, particularly Irish political history, but political history more generally. If you're studying American politics, the history of American politics is going to be very important, as well as things like the history of slavery and so forth. And also philosophy. I'm sort of myself straddling that link between these two disciplines. I'm a political theorist, stroke political philosopher. And again, we have philosophers within our school as well, studying different areas of philosophy, moral philosophy, epistemology, and so forth. And all of these things work very well with the study of politics. So that's important to keep in mind, that you have these, it opens the door to connections with a wide range of other fields. Now, I want to say a little bit about the typical degree structure. What do things look like if you study a politics degree? So it varies a little bit across the different years, but essentially what you're doing is usually 3 modules per term. So we split things up split the year into 2 semesters. So you have assessments at the end of each semester. So we're not piling everything up until the end of the year, as they do in some universities. And within each semester, you'll study usually 3 courses. And so over the course of the year, you'll have studied 6 different modules or courses, if you like. So that's usually the structure. So 6 per year, over 3 years, 18 different subjects, 18 different modules, essentially. Now, for each of those modules, what you'll normally expect is to get 2 hours of lectures every week for each module, and 1 hour of small group teaching, a tutorial, in addition. So for each module, you get lectures and a tutorial. In addition, there's open office hours to go and talk to staff individually. You can also email them. We've got a very fancy new software called Canvas, which enables online discussion groups to be set up as well. So there's a variety of different ways in which you can communicate in the course of the degree. It's going to look a little bit different for us this year, obviously, with COVID, but this is the standard structure that we work with. This is what we plan around. In your 3rd year, the number of lectures goes down a little bit. It'd normally be 1 lecture per week in a sort of specialist subject, but in 1st and 2nd year, it's 2 lectures per week plus a tutorial. Now, in terms of assessment, assessment is usually done by essay and exam. Essays, usually 2. It varies a little bit depending on the weighting, but usually 2 essays per module, 1 in the middle, 1 towards the end is how it's done. There are exams, but over the last few years, we've moved primarily to assessing things through essays rather than exams. People find that less stressful on the whole, and that's normally how we do it. For 1 or 2 subjects, there are good reasons for sticking with exams, and they do that, but it's mostly essays at this point. And there are a variety of other things. Sometimes people include ask you to submit a blog post or something like that, or a learning journal. It depends very much on the individual module. But as a general rule, that's the form that it takes. The other thing to note is that within the degree structure, there's opportunities for internships. So in your 3rd year, there's a specific internship module that you'll take. So you're not doing it in addition to your degree, you're doing it as part of your degree. And that might involve, in 1 semester, spending a certain amount of time during the week with an organization like the Equality Commission, for example, or in Stormont with a particular department in the civil service, for example, and you'll write a project agreed between your supervisor in Queen's and the institution itself. And that gives you a feel for the working environment, a feel for what these different organizations do. And obviously you might be doing this with a view to thinking about having a career in them later on. So, and you also make useful contacts there as well. So that's one aspect of the degree itself. Students also have the opportunity to take a dissertation module. So if there's some aspect of the study of politics that particularly appeals to you, you've taken a course on it in your 1st and your 2nd year, you want to do more work on it, then you can also write a dissertation. The dissertation is relatively short. It's a bit like writing 3 to 4 essays, if you like, but on a topic that you can agree with your supervisor, something that you want to dig into a little bit more, do a little bit more work on, if you like. And that's a nice way to sort of complement some of the stuff that you find in the degree, things that you want to dig into a little bit more. You can do that at undergraduate level before you go on to postgraduate, for example. Now, the course content, I'll just say a little bit about this because there's no point in me reading it out to you when you could read it yourself. But there's a range of topics in your 1st year. Comparative politics, perspective in politics, which is a sort of political theory course dealing with concepts and their application to real world problems. The thing to note here is that you'll take 4 of your 6 modules in your 1st year from politics itself, but you can also take 2 modules from across the faculty. Something that maybe, you just have a vague interest in. You might want to take a sociology course, you might want to take a philosophy course, just so you can broaden your horizons and see what's going on in those disciplines. So you could take a mixture of politics and some other discipline from around the faculty. That can be useful. We hope, obviously, that people in other departments will find our courses interesting and switch to our particular discipline. Once they've had a taste of it, you might want to go in the other direction. That can always be facilitated. The most important thing for us here is that you get to study the things that interest you, If you find that something else interests you a little bit more than politics, or maybe you want to combine, you maybe want to switch from a single honours strict politics degree to a joint honours, we can facilitate that. That's easy. I myself didn't come to university to study politics or political theory. I set out to study English and history, but I took some politics courses along the way and discovered that's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And here I am, for better or worse. In later years, in the second year, you do more politics modules, a wider range of them, things like American politics, modern political thought, which is a very fine module, which I teach myself, politics of the European Union, there's a whole range of different things, politics of divided societies, and that's what goes on in the second year. Now, in the third year, there's a much wider range of options available. This is a particular product of the fact that we have this large and diverse department. We can offer lots and lots of different options in people's specialist subjects. So in your third year, you have a lot more room for choice. As I say, you can choose an internship and a dissertation, but also some of these many specialist modules that we have here as well. You can look through them yourself. Now, what you study when you take a politics degree is obviously the study of politics, the academic study of politics. So a big chunk of it is acquiring intellectual knowledge, intellectual know-how. But it's also important to note that when you study a degree, a general humanities or social science degree, you're also acquiring a range of transferable skills of different sorts. So you're learning research skills, how to find information. That's a huge part of it. When you want to assess some of the claims people make in the newspapers or in social media, you need to know how to go about getting good, reliable information. Where do I go looking for that? How do I assess it once I've got it? How do I gather this information? What tools do I use? Whether in the library, which has this tremendous range of hard copy sources and also increasingly online sources as well. How do I go about accessing this stuff? So research skills are enormously useful. You'll always find yourself in a position where you need to know more about a subject quite quickly, whether you're in journalism or politics itself. And these are the sort of skills that you'll acquire in the politics degree. Obviously, critical thinking and awareness, you're particularly trained, if you like, to ask yourself, well, how do they know that? Is that a good argument? Is that a bad argument? What are they assuming when they're making this argument? So this becomes a sort of second nature to you once you've studied this stuff long enough. It's harder and harder to take things at face value, if you like. Our modern culture is more and more like that anyway. But when you study these sorts of degrees, you're sort of trained to ask these questions all the time. So that's important, the critical analysis skills. How do you assess an argument? How do you assess the information that you're being presented with? Obviously, communication skills are important. Presentations are an important part of the tutorial process usually. I've been really, really impressed, I have to say, in recent years at how students' communication skills have come on. People use PowerPoint in all sorts of interesting ways, use lots of visuals, as well as just the ability to speak coherently about a subject for a couple of minutes. So we put a lot of emphasis on different forms of communication, the ways in which you can enhance those skills. Obviously, information technology skills, there are more and more software that you can use. Even a political theorist like myself, who spends most of his time reading dusty books, has occasion to use all sorts of different bits of software to carry out my work. So it's important to know that, but also organizational skills. What you'll notice in a politics degree is that you're not 9 to 5 sitting in a classroom. You have a lot of time at your own disposal, mostly for reading and gathering information. We expect you to turn up at class prepared, having read the material and thought about it and be prepared to discuss it. So the reason you're not spending 9 to 5 in the class is because you need to spend a lot of time in the library, reading blog posts, reading books, reading articles, thinking about them, making notes, all of these things. So the generic skill associated with that is just being able to organize your time and organize your work and things like that. So that's very important for later life as well. And finally, teamworking. We expect people to be able to argue about difficult issues in class, but in a way that's civil and constructive, and that's teamworking in a way. Some of our modules have specific group projects that require you to collaborate with others and produce a piece of joint work at the end of it. So these are all important generic skills that you'll acquire, as well as finding out about how the laws and sausages are made. The employment prospects for politics graduates are good in general. If you see statistics on government websites, I've been looking at some recently, the employment prospects for graduates within their first 6 months are very, very good, and they get better as time goes on. So it's always a good move to take a degree. It makes a huge influence. It has a huge influence on your earnings over time and your general well-being. But in terms of the politics degree itself and the sorts of things you might do, obviously, some people want to be politicians. We've had representatives from all the major local parties that pass through our portals. I don't think there's any of them that we haven't had. So a wide range of opinion there. But also related fields, journalism, media communications, public relations, the civil service at high levels, and also NGOs, business, finance. There's lots of things you can put an understanding of politics to work in. As I say, politics is really fundamental to our lives in general. And knowledge of politics gives you a real understanding of the world in a way that other disciplines really don't. Now, I guess everybody else is recording their own videos and saying something similar about their own subject. But in our case, it's true, right? That's the difference. So there's a wide range of careers you can take a politics degree to, because it gives you such a fundamental understanding of how our world operates. Here's a couple of our graduates at work here. You see Stephen Farry, who's an MP, a former minister in the Assembly. William Crawley, some of you will be familiar with from the BBC. We're cheating slightly here. William Crawley, I think, is actually a philosophy graduate, but we're a joint school, so we're going to claim William Crawley. You'll see Mark Carruthers in the bottom corner if you follow Northern Ireland politics at all. Of course, you'll see Mark Carruthers on the TV pretty much every week. Some of our graduates, like Mary Murphy, are academics. I'm very pleased to say that one of my own students has recently joined us as joined me as a colleague working in the school. Has come through as an undergraduate or postgraduate degree or doctoral degree, and has now joined us working as a political philosopher. So we have lots of our students go on to study politics at higher levels and go on to have careers in the study of politics. But also, as I say, in politics itself and in related fields like media and PR. You see Sarah McCaffrey here at the bottom, works for BBC Children's. Sarah, I supervised her dissertation some years ago, and Sarah was very heavily involved in the Queen's Student Union radio. So that's worth keeping in mind, that apart from the formal elements of your degree, there are lots of opportunities when you're at Queen's to do lots of extracurricular activities, and not just all the sports and fun things like that, but things that you might be able to use in your career later on. Sarah always knew she wanted to work in media and spent her time, as I say, outside her formal studies, making programs for Queen's Student Union as well, for the Student Union radio show. So that's also something to bear in mind, another advantage of studying here, studying at Queen's. I'll not read out these quotes. We asked some of our former students what they thought about studying at Queen's. You'll see they quite enjoyed it, found it quite useful. Ethan, the second student here, Ethan mentions his Maymester. This was an exchange program we had with Vanderbilt University in Nashville in Tennessee. The Harvard of the South, as it is known. We had an exchange whereby some of our students would spend a May in Nashville with a group of students from Nashville who'd come to Belfast for a term. So they formed a group of combined Queen's and Vanderbilt students, spent some time here in Belfast, but also over in Nashville as well. So that's what Ethan is referring to there. Ethan also went on the Erasmus program to Warsaw. So we have very, very extensive exchange links around the world, a large number of universities across Europe, but also universities in America. So obviously at present, we're a little uncertain as to how the Erasmus program will develop, but we're going to do our very best to hold on to those connections as much as we can. And as I say, also develop further links, such as the ones we have with the US. So regardless, there are lots of study abroad opportunities. Students often go in for 1 semester or 1 year, perhaps in their 3rd year. Some versions you can combine it as part of your degree, some versions you take a year out to do it. But that's also something to bear in mind. That's something that Ethan enjoyed particularly while he was at Queen's. I'd just like to say that's the end of my talk. Obviously, there's loads more to say about the study of politics. You may have loads more questions to ask. Do look at our website. That'll give you more information about who we are and what we study. But also, if there's people you want to get in touch with, you can track us down and ask us further questions about maybe specialist disciplines or what the degree would look like, things like that. Any questions you might have, just get in touch. We'd be happy to hear from you.